I remember the moment clearly, the sluggish feeling after a week that had eaten me alive. I'd missed workouts, grabbed whatever food was fastest, and stayed up late trying to catch up on emails. Then, on Sunday, I told myself, tomorrow, I'll make it perfect. I'll get it all back. But the next day, despite doing everything right, my energy crashed hard by midday. The sharp rise and fall left me frustrated, questioning why all the effort to fix things in one day wasn't enough. If you've ever been there, stuck on that roller coaster of bursts of energy followed by crushing fatigue, you understand a little of what I'm about to share. That experience isn't unusual at all. Too many times I, and many men I've talked to, have tried to cram everything good into a single day, hoping to reverse the damage of days or even weeks gone off track. What I realized after a long, honest look with myself was that this struggle wasn't about willpower or motivation. It was about the deeper rhythms my body was trying desperately to find and keep. I saw how my erratic days, irregular sleep, and inconsistent habits left my system confused, stuck in a loop of alertness and exhaustion, never landing in a sustainable flow. This isn't just about feeling tired, it's about how my body's core functions, especially the hormonal signals that shape my energy, focus, and vitality, respond or don't respond to the everyday signals I give it. It's like trying to dance when the music is constantly shifting or pausing unexpectedly. No matter how skilled I thought I was or how hard I pushed, the steps would feel off. That's exactly how my testosterone and energy cycles felt. Unsteady, unpredictable, lurching forward only to fall backward. What surprises many, myself included, is that the answer doesn't lie in extreme measures or one-off heroic efforts. It lies in what might sound almost too simple. Consistent, clear signals repeated daily. My body thrives not on occasional intensity but on reliable patterns, even if those patterns aren't perfect. This realization changed everything. Instead of trying to make Sunday the perfect day and ignoring the preceding chaos, I began to pay attention to what rhythm I was giving my body every single day. I started to see those rhythms not as a burden, a checklist to obsess over, but as a language my body and I needed to learn together. How could I expect growth, strength, or clarity if the conversations I had with my body were haphazard, unpredictable, or confused? The highs of energy I sought in moments of intensity weren't sustainable. Instead, they were flashes that left me worse off. That's a harsh truth I had to accept. My body's chemistry, my sense of drive, and my clarity responded to the quiet, unspoken agreements I set with myself each morning, afternoon, and night. During this process, I saw the power of everyday choices and routines, those little things I'd overlooked or dismissed, and how they formed the foundation for everything else. The exact timing of waking up, the first light I welcomed, the way I moved my body in the morning, and even how I nourished myself sculpted the invisible environment where my hormones did their work. When my routine was inconsistent, the system felt like a malfunctioning engine firing off at the wrong times. I can honestly say this journey has felt like learning a new language, one spoken between my biology and my will. Each day, the signals I send become clearer, more reliable. And the shift from chaos to rhythm isn't slow or invisible. It punches through. I felt what it means when the body steps out of survival mode and into a place where energy is not a fleeting guess but a steady companion. This is what I want to take you toward. Before we dive deeper, I invite you to think about your own daily rhythm. If you had to point to one part of your routine right now where your energy falters or your body feels out of sync, what would that be? That glimpse into your own pattern is your doorway into understanding how closely energy, hormones, and routine intersect. Our path ahead won't be about perfection or extreme transformation overnight. It will be about embracing the steady pulse beneath the chaos, learning how to speak that language of consistency that your body not only understands but starts to thrive on. Together, we'll explore what it means to create a rhythm, not a sprint, a dance that honors your biology, not fights against it. When the body knows the rhythm, that's when everything starts to respond: energy, clarity, performance, all weaving into a life that feels full, strong, and unwavering. There was a time I believed that pushing myself harder and harder in chaotic bursts was the way to overcome fatigue. I'd cram in intense workouts after nights of restless sleep, thinking sheer force would reset everything. Yet, each attempt left me more drained, as if my inner engine was sputtering rather than roaring to life. I realized that my approach lacked something essential, an underlying framework that my system could rely on, a structure that didn't demand extremes but provided stability. This insight hit me during an early morning walk under a pale sky. The sun was just breaking the horizon, casting long shadows on the pavement. I noticed how each breath felt smoother with every step, how my thoughts cleared alongside the gentle rhythm of my movement. That quiet consistency, moving steadily, greeting the day's first light, made a subtle but profound difference. It dawned on me how vital those modest, repeated signals were. They weren't big events or spectacular efforts. They were simple acts consistently repeated over time, weaving a supportive pattern beneath every action. I began to experiment with this idea, focusing less on the intensity of any given session and more on the regularity of my cues. For example, I committed to stepping outside daily within an hour of waking, soaking in natural sunlight to reset my internal clock. No matter if it was cloudy or cold, I made this non-negotiable. Soon, I felt a gradual lift in my alertness and mood. It was as if my system started expecting this light, humming with anticipation rather than confusion. The body's natural cycles started to synchronize around this reliable input, providing a foundation for hormonal balance. Similarly, I reworked my physical activity. Instead of pushing for marathon sessions sporadically, I shifted to shorter, deliberate movements aligned with my energy levels every day. Some mornings called for brisk walking. Others begged for stretching or light calisthenics. This less aggressive, more nuanced approach helped me avoid burnout and maintain momentum. Over time, these subtle but consistent efforts began to recalibrate my internal timing, making energy surges smoother and less unpredictable. Another revelation came with nutrition. Rather than swinging between dieting extremes or last-minute clean eating days, I opted for steady fueling routines that supported internal harmony. It meant incorporating anti-inflammatory foods regularly rather than relying on occasional detoxes or cheat meals followed by guilt. I started seeing food as a conversation, offering steady encouragement instead of erratic demands. This steady nourishment translated into more consistent energy levels and fewer crashes. One afternoon, I recall sitting with a close friend who shared his own struggles with vitality. He described a constant tug-of-war between high-octane days and sluggish recovery. I shared my discoveries about daily rhythm and steady cues, and we talked about how restoring balance felt more like a marathon than a sprint. That conversation affirmed that this isn't just my story. It's a common thread many men wrestle with quietly. We both agreed that reclaiming energy requires patience and respect for what the body genuinely needs day by day. On a different note, embracing predictable timing also improved my sleep quality. By establishing a loose but steady evening routine, like dimming lights, avoiding screens, and winding down at roughly the same hour, I noticed quicker, deeper rest cycles. This consistency gave my body clearer signals about when to shift into repair mode. Rather than chasing random pockets of rest, my nights became more restorative naturally. Now, consider how this applies when you face the temptation to binge on workouts after neglect or attempt radical changes in a single burst of motivation. These sudden spikes often confuse the system, pulling it into a cycle of stress rather than renewal. Instead, approaching change as a garden does, with regular watering, small pruning, and patient tending, cultivates fertile ground for growth that lasts. This shift from chasing intensity to honoring rhythm rewired my understanding of masculinity and strength. It wasn't about proving endurance through extremes anymore. Real power came from steady stewardship of my internal resources. Small daily choices aligned like clockwork create a momentum no amount of sporadic heroics can replace. This insight transformed not only my physical energy but also my mindset, allowing me to tackle challenges with calm resolve instead of hasty bursts. Gradually, the dichotomy between effort and rest found harmony in this steady dance. I learned to listen to subtle signals of recovery rather than forcing progress through will alone. It was liberating to know that dedication didn't require rigidity or punishment but consistent presence and respect for natural flow. This ongoing journey continues to reveal layers beneath initial improvement, the deep integration of habits that shape hormonal health over weeks and months. Every morning I step outside, every meal I choose thoughtfully, every night I prepare for sleep becomes a note in a symphony of balance. This is not about perfection, but about creating a lasting rhythm that fuels genuine vitality. I recall a morning that started like any other, yet unfolded into a revelation that shifted how I approached my daily habits. I was meeting a friend at a local park, the crisp air filled with the subtle scent of pine and dew. As we talked, he mentioned his frustrations with how his energy would spike wildly after an intense workout, only to leave him depleted for days afterward. His story mirrored mine in many ways, but his focus was different. He was chasing recovery in bits and pieces, trying protein shakes, supplements, and sleep hacks without addressing the underlying signals his routine was sending. Listening to him, I realized my previous assumption that energy was something you either had or didn't was too simplistic. The real secret lay in cultivating an internal atmosphere that communicated assurance and dependability. Think of it like wireless reception. You can't expect a steady connection if your signals are intermittent or distorted. The key was creating clear, sustained input that could be detected and trusted, leading to more balanced responses inside. This encounter prompted me to explore outside the usual realms of exercise and nutrition. I started paying attention to the rhythm of my breathing throughout the day. Oddly enough, this overlooked element became a powerful tool. Slow, intentional breaths acted like a metronome, aligning my nervous system's tempo with a steadier pace of wakefulness and calm focus. I practiced taking deeper breaths between meetings or during moments of overwhelm, allowing myself subtle shifts that accumulated into clearer mental states and more regulated energy flows. Further into this exploration, I began to notice the transformative role of environmental cues beyond physical movement and food. The quality of ambient light, the sounds surrounding me, even the temperature in my living space influenced how alert or sluggish I felt. For example, exposure to softer lighting in the evening, think warm hues and dimmed brightness, signaled winding down, while exposure to natural daylight during peak hours served as an energizing nudge. These external conditions provided invisible anchors, helping me recalibrate my internal timing without struggling against it. One afternoon, overwhelmed by a mounting to-do list, I decided to step away from my desk and sit by the window where sunlight spilled in like liquid gold. I observed how small birds flitted from branch to branch, their effortless movements punctuated by brief pauses. Their rhythm seemed unforced, natural, and profoundly balanced. It struck me that my own efforts sought to manufacture productivity, often ignoring the innate wisdom of pausing and pacing myself. These observations led me to adopt mini breaks patterned after this natural flow, moments where I consciously slowed down, listened, and allowed my system to integrate the day's demands rather than bulldozing through them. In addition, I started paying more attention to my evening rituals beyond screens and caffeine. On a particularly restless night, I experimented with gentle tactile sensations, rubbing a smooth stone given by a friend into my palm or wrapping myself loosely in soft fabric. These simple acts anchored me to the present, signaling that it was time for recuperation. Over time, these sensory cues evolved into a quiet language I shared with myself, turning the chaos of unwinding into a predictable, soothing transition. An unexpected benefit emerged in social settings. I realized how irregular schedules and late-night gatherings disrupted the subtle messaging my internal clock relied on. On a weekend trip, I consciously set boundaries around timing, not through rigid rules, but through mindful awareness of how late nights affected my morning energy. Transforming invitations into choices that honored my emerging rhythm meant fewer regrets and clearer mornings. This shift also deepened my self-trust. Admitting that I needed to adjust social patterns wasn't failure but an act of preservation. Navigating these changes, I became intrigued by the concept of anticipation, the idea that my system could prepare itself in advance for predictable events. For instance, I started eating meals around approximately the same time each day, not obsessively precise but consistent enough to signal readiness for digestion. The effect was subtle yet unmistakable. Instead of food becoming a variable that spiked or drained energy unpredictably, it turned into a reliable fuel source, part of a cohesive daily choreography. Through this process, I confronted how irregularity in rest periods impacted me as well. I noticed that fragmented naps or inconsistent downtime scattered my ability to regenerate fully. Gradually, I began weaving distinct intervals of rest into my schedule. Not necessarily long or elaborate, but sufficient to let tension melt away, allowing my system to reset gradually. These pauses offered relief from the relentless demands of modern life, creating breathing room where equilibrium could restore itself. Reflecting now, this phase of my journey felt less like following rigid prescriptions and more like becoming an artist painting with subtle strokes. Each choice, each sensory input, each moment of mindfulness contributed to a vivid portrait of steadiness emerging from apparent chaos. This was a new paradigm of vitality, one where the unseen whispers of rhythm spoke louder than frantic attempts at control. I invite you to consider which unnoticed signals in your daily environment might be influencing your own vitality. Are there simple, gentle shifts you can introduce that call forth steadiness without overwhelming your schedule? Sometimes, the most profound transformations emerge through tending to the smallest details, allowing your internal ecosystem to flourish quietly beneath the surface. One evening, as twilight bled into the horizon, I found myself restless despite the long day behind me. I wandered into the kitchen to pour a glass of water, my mind buzzing with unfinished tasks and scattered thoughts. There, in the quiet hum of the refrigerator, a thought surfaced about how our internal systems respond not only to patterns but also to the subtle nuances of environmental feedback. It struck me that beyond simply following routines, understanding the body's response to microsignals like hydration, temperature shifts, or even breath awareness can profoundly influence hormonal harmony. I remembered a day during a particularly dry spell where dehydration crept in unnoticed. My energy was not just sluggish. It felt hollow, as if something intangible within me had dimmed. Hydration, I realized, acts as a silent but critical messenger for the glands responsible for hormonal orchestration. The absence of sufficient fluids sends stress signals that cascade silently, undermining delicate balances. A simple habit of sipping water regularly transformed my internal communication, allowing cells and glands to operate with clearer instructions. The effect was subtle in the moment but cumulative, like adding one carefully placed brushstroke to a larger canvas of health. Moreover, I began paying attention to temperature variations throughout the day. Morning chills urged me to wrap a light layer around my shoulders, while the afternoon warmth coaxed me outdoors. Initially, these shifts seemed trivial amidst the busyness, yet I noticed that exposing myself deliberately to seasonal transitions, cool morning air, bright sunlight, warm evenings, acted like natural regulators for hormonal cycles. Fluctuations in ambient conditions stimulate the metabolic furnace in ways that synthetic environments often stifle. These encounters with nature's moods reminded me that our internal rhythms aren't isolated. They thrive through dialogue with the external world. One vivid memory takes me back to a hiking trip where, after ascending a rocky trail, I paused on a ledge as the breeze danced through pine needles. I observed how the cool wind wrapped around my skin, prompting a flush of alertness and vitality. This sensation was not just physical but deeply enlivening for my mental state. It dawned on me that such moments, where external stimuli awaken a heightened sense of presence, spark hormonal signals aligning with readiness and strength. I began incorporating deliberate exposures to similar natural stimuli, building these into my daily pattern as sources of subtle resets. Another layer unfolded when exploring the influence of sound. I'd always underestimated how ambient noise shaped my inner environment. In an especially noisy cafe, my concentration fractured repeatedly, leaving a residue of mental fatigue long after departure. In contrast, during early morning hours when the world felt hushed except for chirping birds and soft rustling leaves, I noticed a deep reservoir of calm form beneath the surface. This sparking of quietude functioned as a backdrop, enabling the endocrine orchestra to perform with less interference. Thus, I started curating quieter spaces and times, not to escape life's demands but to give my system breathing room essential for regeneration. Conversations with a colleague who practices sound therapy expanded this insight further. He spoke about frequencies and vibrations as more than abstract concepts. They could actively stimulate hormonal balance through resonance. Curious, I experimented with low-frequency sounds during meditation, noticing a subtle easing of tension and an enlivening effect in the following hours. Although unconventional, these sensory dimensions deepen my appreciation for how multifaceted signals converge to shape my vitality beyond movement, sleep, and nutrition. Then, there was the surprising impact of posture on hormonal messaging. I found myself leaning into the edges of tasks, slouching during long calls, curling into chairs when fatigued, only to realize that these physical positions conveyed messages of surrender and depletion internally. Recalibrating my posture wasn't about perfect alignment. It was about choosing stances that broadcast confidence, openness, and readiness to the body's intricate networks. Practicing upright, expansive stances throughout the day conveyed to neurochemical systems a readiness that translated into sharper focus and steadier energy. This shift in how I inhabited space became a subtle but powerful channel reinforcing hormonal rhythms. One afternoon, during a particularly draining project, I caught my reflection in the window and took stock, not just of my face but how tension had compressed my chest and tightened my shoulders. Intentionally relaxing these areas, expanding my rib cage with deep breaths, and standing tall felt like sending a signal of resilience and renewal inward. It was a physical act intertwined with an emotional message. I am capable, I am present, I engage fully. The sense of empowerment this stance evoked rippled into the clarity and endurance I needed to push through. Reflecting on these discoveries, I realized the orchestration of hormonal balance involves a composition of myriad small, interlocking inputs: hydration, temperature, sound, posture, all converging to shape internal communication. This multifaceted approach respects the complexity of human biology, moving beyond simple checklists toward an artful, dynamic engagement with life's rhythms. Now, imagine approaching your day with heightened awareness of these often overlooked cues. How might sipping water mindfully throughout the afternoon nudge alertness, or incorporating fresh air breaks during work relieve mental fatigue? Small refinements like choosing spaces rich in natural soundscapes or consciously adjusting your posture could become invaluable gestures that steadily bolster energy reservoirs. The invitation here is not to add more demands but to expand your sensory dialogue with the world, tuning in to signals that may have whispered beneath your notice. This nuanced attentiveness cultivates resilience and replenishment from corners you might never have considered. Embracing these sophisticated channels opens a gateway to hormonal stability grounded in attuned living rather than frantic correction. As I navigate this terrain, each day offers new opportunities to decode these subtle messages and respond generously to what they require. This evolving conversation cultivates a wellspring of strength and clarity, a steady pulse beneath external fluctuations. It's a humbling, empowering process, one where refinement replaces coercion, curiosity supersedes fatigue, and new vitality emerges through attunement to life's hidden cadences. Reflecting on this journey so far, I find myself standing at the edge of an unfolding landscape, a terrain shaped not by sudden leaps but by countless, seemingly small decisions woven together like threads in a tapestry. Each subtle gesture, each quiet choice, has layered over time to create a rhythm that hums beneath the surface, a pulse that asks for patience and presence to truly be felt. It's as if I've been learning to listen to a language whispered between moments, a delicate conversation that doesn't shout but invites me closer, urging me to trust in the unfolding process rather than demand immediate results. There was a memory that surfaced recently, something from a long walk under the soft spill of fading light. As I moved, without hurry or resistance, my senses sharpened, noticing the gentle sway of branches, the crispness of the air, the faint scent of earth waking. In that moment, everything seemed to slow and yet expand, a paradox that transformed ordinary sensation into profound connection. That experience wasn't about exertion or accomplishment. It was a quiet surrender to a rhythm that had been gathering strength beneath layers of distraction and noise. It felt less like finding energy and more like allowing it to find me, emerging from a place deeper than effort. I realize now that our vitality often unfolds not in grand gestures but through the subtle architecture of our daily experience. The spaces between actions, the cadence of our steps, the way we align ourselves with time itself. like a river carving its path not by forceful surges, but by steady, patient flow. The sum of these moments constructs a current powerful enough to carry us forward with grace. There's something profoundly humbling and yet exhilarating about this, a recognition that true momentum grows quietly beneath observable change, weaving itself into layers of resilience we may overlook if we race too fast. One afternoon, while sitting in a cafe buzzing with muted conversations and clinking cups, I caught my reflection not only in the glass but in the atmosphere surrounding me. Amidst the subtle interplay of light and sound, I sensed an invisible thread pulling me toward a calm awareness, a stillness camouflaged within the hum of activity. It was as if this external rhythm was synchronizing with an internal pulse I had neglected before. The paradox of finding clarity in chaos resonated powerfully, teaching me that stability need not mean stillness. It can live dynamically within flux, a steady center revolving amid motion. Our lives often sway between extremes, caught in cycles of frantic exertion followed by disorienting depletion. Yet, what if the answer lies not in breaking free through sudden revolution, but by assembling a mosaic of small, intentional acts, each one a deliberate stroke composing an enduring picture of well-being? This image progresses beyond surface victories or fleeting highs into something textured and deep, where strength is measured not by intensity alone but by the capacity to sustain, recover, and adapt. It's an artistry of becoming rather than a conquest to be won. I remember a conversation with someone close, sharing frustrations about restless energy that scattered like embers quick to fade. In that moment, I sensed not just his struggle, but a universal yearning to find footing on shifting ground, to know that the roots beneath hold firm even as winds gust around us. Our exchange uncovered an unspoken truth. Transformation is not linear, and our quest for vitality requires embracing complexity, nuance, and the unpredictability woven into human experience. This realization lifted a weight, inviting gentleness into the process, a willingness to move forward without self-reproach. As I sit with these insights, the horizon feels less like an endpoint and more like an invitation. The path beckons not with bright signs or clear milestones but with an ever-deepening acquaintance to the subtle language of alignment, where every choice, whispered breath, and shared glance forms part of an ongoing symphony. Here, momentum is not forced. It accumulates, built on trust in the unseen dialogues between what we do and how we feel. This unfolding invites us to meet ourselves where we are, aware, patient, open to the gradual emergence of a steady flame that quietly, persistently lights the way. There was a moment when I realized that chasing energy through sheer force alone was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. Elusive, fleeting, and frustrating. I sat quietly as the sun dipped low, casting a warm amber glow across the room, and saw clearly how I had been searching for vitality in bursts of brilliance instead of steady light. The relentless pursuit of peaks had distracted me from the rhythm my inner systems craved. A dependable, gentle cadence that unfolds naturally when given attention over time. It wasn't about grand gestures or heroic feats. It was about embracing the slow, intentional flow that allows strength to grow quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it becomes undeniable. In this space of stillness, I heard a voice within, a kind but unwavering call to shift my expectations. It urged me to honor rhythms not dictated by external urgency or frantic schedules, but guided by an internal compass often drowned out by noise and distraction. I began to grasp that vitality emerges when signals align with a deeper order, when actions resonate with a living pulse that cannot be hurried or fabricated. This insight transformed how I view effort itself, not as a means to temporary spikes but as an investment in an unfolding story of endurance and resilience. I recall a dialogue with a close friend who shared his own struggles with volatility in energy and focus. We spoke with openness about the temptation to cram all our good intentions into solitary days, to make up for neglect with intensity that only burned bridges rather than built roads. His words lingered, reminding me how common this trap is. We live in a culture that glorifies extremes, yet real change demands a different kind of strength, namely patience paired with consistency. The conversation planted a seed of compassion for ourselves amid imperfection, inviting us to become architects of lasting vitality rather than fleeting moments of glory. The unfolding journey revealed something profound. Endurance isn't a destination but a cultivated state. It is woven from choices that feel almost ordinary until looked at closely, from the quiet welcome of morning light to the unhurried steps taken simply to honor movement itself. Each layer adds richness and depth, creating a foundation strong enough to support challenges, yet flexible enough to adapt when life shifts unexpectedly. This nuanced balance marks an evolution from surviving to thriving, not through relentless exertion but through harmony with natural processes that sustain life's energies. As days turned into weeks, I noticed a powerful shift quietly unfolding. The scattered bursts of inspiration and exhaustion gave way to a steadiness that felt like warmth radiating from within. It was as if my vitality transformed from a fragile spark into a steady flame, illuminating even the less dramatic moments of life. This light did not demand attention. It simply was, a presence that accompanied me with unwavering reliability. At times when obstacles appeared, this resilience carried me forward with calm assurance rather than turmoil, proving that the deepest strength often lies in steadiness instead of spectacle. This awareness also touched how I approach challenges beyond personal routines. Facing uncertainty or setbacks no longer feels like a sudden threat but part of a broader rhythm that includes ebb and flow, tension and release. There's a newfound trust in the process, a certainty that even when energy wanes, it will awaken again if tended to patiently and respectfully. This shift creates a space where fear and frustration soften, replaced by curiosity and a willingness to learn from each experience without harsh judgment or self-recrimination. I find that this perspective transforms the way I move through relationships, work, and personal aspirations. Instead of forcing quick resolutions or immediate results, I'm learning to nurture growth through steady commitment and clear communication with my own needs and limits. This approach fosters sustainable progress because it honors the natural timing of transformation, one that thrives on repetition, affirmation, and gentle encouragement more than on dramatic efforts or sudden leaps. While the temptation to seek shortcuts or instant fixes still arises, I remind myself that true power unfolds in the quiet moments when I choose presence over haste, care over coercion. It's in these spaces that confidence grows, not the flashy kind but a deep-rooted knowing that I am capable of sustaining energy and focus through whatever comes. Life, I've come to understand, is less about how forcefully we charge forward and more about how gracefully we dance with our unique rhythm, learning its language through patience and attentiveness. So, as I continue this path, I extend an invitation to you, to listen deeply to your own signals and trust that fostering consistency will birth a vitality authentic and lasting. Honor the small, deliberate acts that cultivate balance and allow strength to permeate your everyday experience. Remember, the journey isn't measured by sporadic achievements, but by the unwavering commitment to show up with intention, compassion, and hope for what's to come. In embracing this gentle revolution, we reclaim our power, not as fleeting sparks but as enduring flames that light the way through all seasons, reminding us that true energy is cultivated with love and presence, blossoming quietly yet fiercely within.